Somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 years ago, a prehistoric human picked up a piece of very, very old fruit. It smelled weird. It looked kind of mushy. Any reasonable person would have thrown it away. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the beginning of alcohol. But who actually figured out how to make it on purpose? And why did every single ancient civilization get obsessed with booze? Stick around. This story is 9,000 years old and it's absolutely wild. Let's start with science, because science is how fruit turned into wine without anyone asking for it. Here's what happens. Fruit falls from a tree. It sits on the ground. Wild yeast, tiny microorganisms that float literally everywhere, lands on it and starts eating the sugar. The yeast eat sugar and produce two things, carbon dioxide and ethanol. Ethanol is the alcohol that makes you feel like you can dance even when you absolutely cannot. Animals figured this out way before humans did. Monkeys in tropical forests have been observed deliberately seeking out fermented fruit for millions of years. Animals figured this out way before humans did. Monkeys in tropical forests have been observed deliberately seeking out fermented fruit for millions of years. For a long time, scientists thought alcohol was invented after farming. The idea was, humans settled down, grew grain, and then someone said, hey, what if we fermented this? But here's the wild twist, some researchers now think it was the other way around. Some believe that humans started farming because they wanted to make beer. In 2018, archaeologists discovered evidence at a site in Israel called Rakfet Cave. The findings suggest that hunter-gatherers were brewing a fermented grain drink at least 13,000 years ago, thousands of years before formal farming. Let that sink in. They weren't farming yet. They weren't even fully settled. But they figured out beer. The oldest confirmed fermented beverage with a definite recipe comes from China. In Jiahu, archaeologists found 9,000-year-old ceramic jars with traces of rice, honey, grapes, and hawthorn berries all fermented together. So basically, 9,000 years ago, someone in China made the world's first cocktail. And we just found the jar. Now let's go to ancient Egypt, where alcohol wasn't just a drink. It was a currency, a medicine, and a gift to the gods. Workers who built the pyramids were paid in beer. We're not joking. Official Egyptian records show that each worker received about 4 to 5 liters of beer per day as part of their wages. Beer in Egypt was thick, more like a nutritious grain porridge than what we drink today. High in calories, carbohydrates, and B vitamins. It was essentially food. The Egyptians had at least 17 different types of beer. They had beer for the living, beer for the dead, and beer offerings placed in tombs so people could enjoy the afterlife properly stocked. There was even a goddess of beer. Her name was Ninkasi, though that name comes from Sumer. In Egypt, the goddess was Tenenet. Either way, ancient civilizations had divine patron deities specifically for alcohol, which tells you exactly how important it was. If Egypt had beer culture, Mesopotamia had beer civilization. The Sumerians, one of the world's first complex societies, left us one of the most fascinating ancient documents in history. It's called the Hymn to Ninkasi, written around 1800 BCE. It's a poem. A poem about beer. Specifically, it's a poem about how to brew beer written in the form of a prayer to the goddess of brewing. It describes soaking grain, making bread, then mixing the bread into water, letting it ferment. It's essentially a 4,000-year-old recipe that archaeologists have actually brewed from. And apparently, it tasted pretty good. Sumerian taverns were everywhere. Run almost entirely by women. By the way, female tavern keepers were a dominant force in ancient Mesopotamian commerce. The Code of Hammurabi, one of the oldest law codes in history, had entire sections dedicated to tavern regulations. If a tavern keeper watered down the beer, the punishment was death by drowning. So if you've ever complained about a weak drink at a bar, you were living in gentler times than the Sumerians. Beer was the drink of workers and farmers. Wine, now that was for civilization. Or at least, that's what the Greeks and Romans would absolutely tell you. The Greeks worshipped Dionysus, the god of wine, madness, and ecstasy. His festivals, called Dionysia, were enormous celebrations where the entire city drank together, performed plays, and celebrated life. Greek wine was also not like modern wine. They mixed it with water. Drinking undiluted wine was considered barbaric. They also added honey, herbs, and sometimes seawater. Then came the Romans, who took Greek wine culture and absolutely scaled it. At the height of the Roman Empire, Italy alone produced roughly 1 billion liters of wine per year. The Romans even had a god of wine, Bacchus, and they were extremely concerned with wine quality. Some Roman wines had vintage labels. Some came from specific estates. Aged wine from particular regions sold for 10 times more than average. When the Roman Empire fell and Europe plunged into the early Middle Ages, a lot of things were lost. Roads, architecture, trade, literacy. But beer? Beer survived. Because the monks kept it alive. Monasteries across Europe began brewing beer for several reasons. First, water in medieval towns was dangerous. Rivers doubled as sewage systems. Fermented drinks were far safer to drink than raw water. Second, monks who were fasting, eating very little solid food, could consume ale as part of their diet. Liquid bread, they called it. A thick, nutritious brew that provided calories during long religious fasts. Medieval monasteries became centers of brewing innovation. They developed yeasts, refined recipes, and shared techniques. Many of the major European brewing traditions, German lagers, Belgian Avialish, English Alish, trace their roots directly to medieval monastery brewing. There's a story, possibly apocryphal but too good not to tell, that when Bavarian monks sent samples of their new strong bought beer to Rome for papal approval, the beer arrived after months of travel completely spoiled. The Pope declared it so horrible and disgusting that surely it was a penance, and approved it for fasting. Beer is maybe 5% alcohol. Wine is around 12 to 14%. But humans, being humans, looked at that and thought, can we make it stronger? The answer was distillation. And it arrived in Europe via the Islamic world. The Persian scholar Al-Kindi, writing in the 9th century, described distillation processes in detail. Arab alchemists refined the alembic still, the essential tool for distillation, and used it to produce medicines and perfumes. Not necessarily alcohol, since Islamic law prohibited it. But the technology was there. When European alchemists got their hands on distillation, they immediately tried it on wine. And they got something remarkable, a clear, powerful liquid they called aqua vitae. The water of life. Aqua vitae became brandy. Then came whiskey in Scotland and Ireland, Ysbitha in Gaelic, which also means water of life. Then gin in Holland. Then rum in the Caribbean. Then vodka across Eastern Europe. By the 1700s, spirits had spread across the entire world and were fueling economies, enabling colonialism, powering sailors on long voyages, and causing enormous social problems, which is a whole other video. So, who figured out alcohol? The honest answer is, nobody specific. And everybody. A prehistoric human accidentally ate fermented fruit and felt something new. Thousands of years later, another human noticed that wet grain smelled interesting. Then someone collected it in a clay pot. Then someone heated it. Then someone wrote it down. Every single civilization that we know of, every single one, independently discovered fermentation. They might not have understood the chemistry. But they all realized that certain foods, left to sit in the right conditions, produced something that made the world feel slightly more manageable. So next time you raise a glass, whatever's in it, you're participating in a tradition that is literally older than writing, older than cities, possibly older than farming itself. Our ancestors figured out alcohol through thousands of years of accidents, creativity, and stubborn curiosity. We've inherited every single drop of that. I'm raising a glass to all of them. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a comment telling us, what drink do you think ancient humans would love in 2026? See you in the next one.